Hello, friends, and welcome to another installment of Go Tell It on the Mountain. This week, I have the privilege and honor of speaking at Faith Congregational Church, where the Reverend Cleo Graham is the new pastor. We are still waiting on your installation day, but it's soon to come in the next few months. But what an amazing opportunity for me to be preaching at the oldest African American church in the Southern New England Conference. And really the United Church of Christ, almost 205 years old, Faith Congregational will be. And it's an opportunity for me to share with that congregation, which is also my home church, but also to be with Reverend Graham. So, Reverend Graham, thank you so much for your time, intention, for the invitation, and for being a part of Go Tell It on the Mountain.
And thank you so much for inviting me to this space. And thank you, Reverend Darrell, for your goodness. I think that should be your last name rather than Goodwin. I'm so glad that I could be here today and to celebrate this time.
Thank you very much. So, Pastor, I am very curious, and many people watching this will be, how did your call bring you to Faith Congregational? So how were you called to Faith Congregational? If you would share a little bit about that testimony.
Sure, it's sort of a long story, but okay, let me just say that my installation date is firmly April 28th of this year.
All right, April 28th, people. So if you are in the Hartford area, and if you're not, because it'll be streamed, you should be at this historic moment in the life of Faith Congregational Church on April 28th. Thanks, Pastor.
So there's a lot to unpack, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, Pentecostal church, Baptist church, and I attended an all-girls Catholic school. And then I spent about 30 years in the medical field, and I'm a retired nurse practitioner, but I've always had an attraction to spirituality. And it was a serious injury that left me bedridden, and I felt the Lord was speaking to me that my career would change, and it certainly did. But at the time when I did start to recover, I was in a predominantly all-Black Baptist church in Rhode Island, who could not appreciate having a woman ordained. And I was there for 22 years, and I didn't think there was going to be any movement. And so I heard about Reverend Yvonne Delk and the U.C.C., and I became very interested. And so I felt as though the U.C.C. was a place that could take all of this, the Baptist, Pentecostal, Catholic background. And so I did get ordained in 2012, I believe it was, in Rhode Island. I was the first person of color ordained in Rhode Island. And my first call was to Hope Congregational Church in East Providence, predominantly all-white church, but very friendly. And then I received a call to Beneficent Church, a multicultural church. And both positions were associate pastor positions. I also spent quite a bit of time doing some interim work as well, as far as the Cape and Newport and other places as well. But it didn't appear that I would get a call as a senior pastor of color in Rhode Island. And then I received a call from an actual telephone call from Tamara, Reverend Tamara Moreland. She says, there's a church that is looking for a pastor. And so Melvin and I did some research. We were very, very solidly involved in genealogy for more than 10 years. And so we loved studying history. And we fell in love with the history. We fell in love with the Pennington legacy. We fell in love with the Amistad. We fell in love with the idea that, these folks were at it for more than 200 years and still going. And it was a church that we weren't sure if they were going to even continue. They had done worship services with Emmanuel Church, and this is during COVID. So I accepted the call during COVID, not ever meeting them in person, but recognizing that the theme for me was love, that I needed to make sure that they were loved. And so my call was built around love and also hope. And then a year later, I finally met them in person, and they complimented me by saying, "Gee, you're not that big. I thought you were a lot bigger than on the screen."
Full of spirit, big life.
And that was a real gentle welcome. We did the drive-by communion, we did the walk-in communion, and so we gradually returned to the building. My medical background also continued to inform me. So I was very careful about that and letting them know that wearing a mask was a spiritual discipline rather than something that's really harsh. And it was a way to show love for one another.
Yes.
And so my first year was just, it was such a good year to be with this family. And at the same time, we did continue to have joint worship services quarterly with Emmanuel Congregational Church as well. But what was really exciting too was when I met Reverend Darrell Goodwin. I think I was the first one to have lunch with you.
Yes.
You had just arrived in town. I had spent 3 years on the committee that managed the merger of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So I felt as though that was one big gift for me at the end of
Mm.
such tremendous work that we did, good work. And so here I am at Faith. And for the first 2 years, Melvin and I commuted back and forth between Rhode Island and Faith, and then finally ended up moving into a small apartment in Hartford. And now we're in a two-family house where a couple is renting, helping us there. So it's just been such a blessing, let me tell you.
Mm.
I just got off the phone with the secretary of Yale University. The Yale president is going to send me a photo of him and I when I spoke at Yale University regarding Reverend Pennington getting his degree 186 years later, but
Mm.
finally receiving it posthumously. So there's so much excitement at Faith. It never ceases to amaze me as we dig back in the history, but bring it forward, even in our worship service. Somehow that history is just present and it's so rich. And so we're excited now to have Reverend Darrell come this Sunday to give us the word. Even though we do see him periodically in the pews, I tried to peel him out of the pews and get him up on the pulpit to at least
You do indeed.
do a reading, a prayer, or something. But, I put him to work, so to speak, in a spiritual way. And so we're looking forward to him bringing the message this week as well. And one thing I can pride ourselves in is our music taste so good.
Mm.
The music alone gives you an opportunity to experience another sermon in another sense. We love to feed folks, so fellowship is important for us.
Mm.
And we typically will have a fellowship after worship service. So we hope that you'll come and join us.
So, Pastor, one of the things that I want to highlight a couple of there was a lot that you offered and pregnant for us to pay attention to. I think often we think in our context, oh, it's Black History Month. What can I do? And we're looking for an organization or some service to sort of show that we want to be connected. And I want to just publicly say here, I think Faith Congregational is one of those places that, as some of our sister churches are thinking of, like, how can we sow in? How can we give? How can we bless a Black-led and historically African-American organization? And I want to name Faith Congregational as one of those places that I think people can sow into for the vision that I think you will bring as a new pastor, but also for the energy that I see happening around that community. I want to name, because I think it's important, your own testimony about being a person of color ordained in Rhode Island, and not just a person of color, but I believe the first African-American woman. So you have the history of your own personal life and now marrying it to the history of faith. And while you have named some things that you are excited about, I want to give you just another opportunity. If you were to think about faith, even over the next 3 years, Pastor, what's one hope that the people watching this can pray alongside of you and the faith community to allow the Spirit to do in the life of Hartford and our conference? What's one hope you have for Faith Congregational?
I think, again, it still is fellowship and discipleship with all people, regardless of your race, gender, orientation, just fellowship with all people. I would envision us as really a multicultural church as well.
Mm.
And so that would be very rich for us to achieve that. But also to get our roof repaired.
Right.
It's safe, it's good, but it's
I
something excellent.
personally, Faith has been a steward of some of the most beautiful history, not only of the historic Connecticut Conference, but also I'm going to say the Southern New England Conference and the United Church of Christ. The historic Oregon that was an Amistad Chapel in our national setting now resides at Faith Congregational Church. I think a lot of the legacy of who we can be in New England around racial justice and the stewardship of a historic Black congregation and the life of the conference is a legacy that I think Faith will continue and that I think we all have a part in. Now, Pastor, how can people join us on Sunday? People are welcome, I know, to come in person and hear some Wayne Dixon music. And I might have a little something to say on a sermon, but how can people join us? Do you join us in person, primarily online? What are the ways in which people can be a part of the Faith congregational worship experience?
Yeah, we have some wonderful singers. In fact, one of our soloists, Patricia, will be singing behind Bocelli coming up in the next few days. So it's a wonderful choir and wonderful congregation as well. Our worship service typically starts at 9:45 because the deacons begin the worship service, and it ends around it ends around noontime or 11:30. But we don't have a clock in the sanctuary, so we're not watching the clock. So it ends with it ends, but it ends at a comfortable pace as well. And I always believe there's something for everyone when you come to worship with us. We do have a program for children. So if you have little ones, then we have a leader that takes them and works with them, and as well as gives them snacks and things like that. So it's a very welcoming environment as well. And then you get to see the Amistad Chapel. We will be having Wednesday worship, what we call Wonderful Wednesday. You end up leaving with a bag lunch, but you'll also have worship in the Amistad Chapel. It's
So
12 to 1 and 6 to 7.
One of the things that I will just draw folks' attention to is Faith Congregational Church is one of the many places of hope and light in the Southern New England Conference. And, the conference is investing in a media campaign and a marketing strategy for our churches on findhopenow.org. So I want you to know that you can find more information about Faith Congregational at findhopenow.org by doing Church Finder. But also at the top of this broadcast, you can also see a link to Faith Congregational Church. And I strongly encourage you, go to that link, get information about joining the Facebook page, get information about streaming the worship experience. And as you've heard from Reverend Cleo Graham, come in person and just be a part of the community. Even if you have your own faith community, if you want to sow into a beacon of light and hope in this region, encourage other people including yourself, to not only sow financially, but even with presence. So, Pastor Graham, thank you for your yes. Your yes well before you found the United Church of Christ in Rhode Island or before you found Faith Congregational Church. Your yes has not only been a healing, I hope, in your own life, but I want you to know it continues to bless the community. So from Faith and the Southern New England Conference, we wish you all a happy Black History Month, but we also strongly encourage you to do your own justice work by investing in Black and Brown faith communities in the Southern New England Conference. Pastor, I'll give you the last word. Any final things you want to say?
No, thank you. No, I just want to remind you that we also live stream, and you can see us also on YouTube as well. And so we look forward to seeing you and welcoming you, radically welcoming you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Again, blessings on all of you. And if you have an opportunity, please share this installment of Go Tell It on the Mountain, and we might be a support to Faith Congregational and many of our historic Black churches in the Southern New England Conference. Blessings. Thank you, Pastor.
Look forward to hearing you preach this Sunday.
Thank you.